So what I'm going to do is going to give you all, say, 5 or 6 minutes to tell us who you are, tell us your story. Let's get to know each other first, because I think it's really interesting not to just get people's opinions, but to also get people's experiences and get to know who it is that's talking with us. So for me, this is very much it's a relationship building exercise as well as a learning about what we each bring to the conversation exercise. So, Luke, I'm going to go to you first, and you're our representative of Men in Nursing. You'd like to tell us a bit about your background and what your role is in the whole conversation in terms of Men in Nursing.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Thanks everyone for having me today. So my background is I've been a registered nurse now for about 4 years, so still fairly early in my career. When I was in high school, I didn't actually think I was going to be a nurse. I thought I was going to be an engineer, but I just got this really keen sense that nursing provides so much to the community, and it's something I wanted to explore. I had many people be very supportive, but I had some people that weren't so supportive. So one notable member of my family was my grandfather. He had a very stoic idea of what a man was, and when I told him, he pretty much laughed in my face. So that wasn't the best reaction that I wanted. And from there, luckily from my immediate parents, I did have great support, and I was able to still continue nursing and be very successful during my studies and secure a job at the end. But this all came about because of my affiliation with the Australian College of Nursing. I attended one of their forums in 2018, and the Federal Health Minister, Greg Hunt, was speaking, and he said, how do we get nursing as a profession? It's more than a profession, it's a vocation. And during the end, there was time for questions. During that time, I just said, if you want, well, he made a small comment about men in nursing and how we should support them in this role. So I put my hand up for a question, and I just said that during my time, I had this experience, and that if we want more men in the profession, we need to really have an overarching message that it's okay to care. So then from that message, the campaign started. I was asked, I never had any plan to start a national movement with the college to start Men in Nursing Working Party, the first in the country. But I was asked to by the CEO of the Australian College of Nursing, Kylie Ward. And then from here, we've had much success through publishing an ebook with 26 or maybe 27 stories now of men who started back in the 1970s when it was less than 10% than what it is now, and all the way now to undergraduate students sharing their love and their inspiration of why they chose to do nursing. And the main key messages of the Men in Nursing movement is about caring is a gender neutral expression. It's something that is fitted for whether you're male or female or whatever gender you identify or don't identify by. It's a profession that needs to be seen in that way. Otherwise, I think we lose a lot out of diversity in the healthcare profession, and a lot of people will miss out on that benefit, on patient outcomes, satisfaction, comfortability with their staff, looking after them. I think we need as many different variety of people in every area of the industry, including healthcare and nursing. So really that's a short snapshot of what we're doing so far, Glenn. Happy to provide more if you think I've missed something out, but that's about it.
That's a really just a month on Zoom and still forgetting to unmute myself.
Yeah.
That's a really great introduction. We've posted a link to the Men in Nursing website there. I mean, just fantastic work. Great to see Mel Fraser nodding in the background there, because Mel's been our go-to male nurse for many years now, and
it's great, Mel.
Great to have another generation of Men in Nursing coming through. And where are you based, Luke?
I'm based in Brisbane.
You're in Brisbane. Okay, cool. So thanks for being here, and we'll come back to you as we evolve the conversation. So I think we'll do the order I came to in the first round. So Greg, then Tristan, then Mark. So Greg, fantastic advocate for male carers, and Greg raised the point when I was chatting with him before this event that there's a difference between paid male care workers and men caring for family members. And so I just want to put that on the table, that not all experiences of caring are represented here. And one of them is we haven't got like we've heard references in the conversation already today about male aged care, men working in caring with older people, for example, was something that came up. We haven't got any paid care workers. Greg is a carer for his mum, and he'll share his story and tell you about the work that he's been doing. Amazing work that he's just non-stop doing with Men Care too, in between caring for his wonderful mother. Over to you, Greg.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks for having me on. That obviously unpaid informal caring is where I come from. I just think it's really important to note that difference, because there's paid care workers and unpaid family members that care for someone, and I think that's probably one of the challenges I come up against, is because caring is such a broad term, and it can be, as Luke said, it's gender neutral, really, caring for someone. So where I come from, the Men Care 2 aspect started, I guess, back in '99. Mum was diagnosed with a cancer of unknown primary. She was only given a 5-year prognosis, and she's still here today, and I'm very thankful for that. And she's got a number of health issues, and the main one being a chronic condition with her spine that affects her mobility. So I'm really her help around the home and in and out of chairs, help her to get around if she needs a hand on bad days, and I'm just be her friend a lot of the time too. That's what a big part of caring for someone, is just being their friend and supporting them emotionally, I think. And that's where there's a lot of challenges for blokes, I think, is that emotional side of it. We're really good at all the practical aspects that we can learn how to do things, how to take care of someone, how to do all the stuff you need to do around the home, pay the bills, all that sort of thing. But yeah, the emotional side of the caring is very difficult at times. And being involved in a cancer support group for about 10 years, I had there was a number of other guys in the group that were more senior fellas, and they cared for partners and wives. And being around them, I heard stories about how they were solely focused on the person they cared for. They neglected their own health and didn't get out socially and that themselves. And being around that scene, that I recognised that I was doing exactly the same thing. And it was actually with Glenn's book, and I think I've mentioned this before, Glenn, about your Stop Male Suicide book, to look through them situational risk factors with the relationships, finances, your own health, and all them sort of things that can impact on your suicidal thoughts, and going down that dark path. And recognising that that's a challenge was a challenge for myself, and also for a lot of blokes in that caring role, and particularly if the caring role comes to an end, there's a lot of challenges there because of that situation you're in. So I guess Men Care 2's come about because of that, because I couldn't find supports out there for blokes like me that were caring for a family member. There wasn't really anything designed for guys like me at any age. I think there's young blokes in caring roles for family members and older blokes in caring roles, but I couldn't really find anything. There are a few things out there, but not really anything that's really engaging and that I could find where I fit in. So that's why I developed Men Care 2, and it's an informal service organisation, whatever you want to call it. But it's based around being informed, connected, and active, and they're the three things that I think if I had it done a long time ago, I would be in a better place right now. But doing them now, I'm giving myself a better chance, and sharing that with other people makes me feel good outside of caring for mum, which is my number one job. And the boss isn't too bad, so we get along well.
Mute. And how is it down in Tassie? It's not been that long. Yeah,
beautiful, nice sunny day today. You wouldn't think it was winter in Tassie, but I've been told it's going to get colder over the next month or so.
Oh, mate, I'll tell you. Yeah. There was an old. I can't remember who made the joke about San Francisco, but you could say that the longest winter I ever spent was a summer in Tasmania. But I did spend I can't remember who made that gag, but I did winter on the North Coast there. Gary, do you know Gary Green?
Yep.
Yeah, so Gary, and at Sisters Beach. I house sat for Gary Green. For those who don't know, also a nurse actually, and from the Men's Sheds movement, and set up the Spanner in the Works men's health toolkit. I house sat for Gary down in Sisters Beach about 2 or 3 winters ago, and it was beautiful, but it was bloody freezing. And I'm not sure whether it was a good experience or not. I still can't work out. I was glad to be. But Tassie is such a beautiful spot, and I'm really glad you're enjoying it down there. Yep. Even though you do get 4 seasons in one day.
Yep. Thanks, Glenn.
Great. Good to see you, Greg. Looking forward to your contribution throughout this conversation. And in terms of, there's a lot of men in sort of that informal caring role, and particularly as men get, you mentioned there, the senior fellows, particularly as men get older, I think probably something to do with the fact that more men die younger, so men may be more likely to be in the situation. But I can't remember if it's like about 50% or just over 50% of older carers are men.
Yeah, it sort of switches, I think, between women and men. The women are primary carers up until around that 70, 80-year age group. And then it sort of switches and men become the primary carer, majority of primary carers. So it's that older age group of guys is really, really important. And I think Stuart Torrance, I can see him on there he's with the Men's Shed now, but I know he's done a lot of work with men in informal caring roles around dementia and that. So he's got a lot of good experience there, and I'll definitely keep in touch with him.
Yeah. Great, thanks. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I spotted Stuart's here. Hopefully, we'll get to hear from him later. So we'll come to Tristan now. So back to the world of being paid for caring, but apparently not enough is something which comes up a lot in terms of the barriers to getting more men into early childhood education. Tristan, your story, please, and your thoughts on working in early childhood education as a bloke.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks for having me, everyone. I haven't done anything like this before, but I hopefully I've got some good information to give you. And my wife reminded me this morning that I'm not a public speaking genius. That people just want to hear my story. So here goes. I'm grateful to be involved in this discussion, and I'll let you know a little bit about my professional journey and growing up. Talking about myself doesn't always come easily. Currently full-time employed as a diploma-trained educator in a centre, Adamstown Community Early Learning and Preschool. And so, my wife and I moved away from Sydney a few years ago for her work primarily. We didn't realise at the time, but it was probably a really good move, more so for the lifestyle. It's not so busy in Newcastle, and it's just a lot more relaxing. And we noticed the difference as soon as we moved up. A lot less high rises, and just a bit more of a relaxed vibe. What would I say? The one challenge with the move, however, was that I had to do a lot of casual work. So I moved out of a role where I was leading a room of toddlers into a role, into basically no role. I was doing a lot of casual work, and it led to some internal feelings of not failure, but feeling sort of concerned that I wasn't really contributing enough in the way of income to the house. But luckily I had a very supportive wife and understanding, and we just had to be very calm and patient, and eventually some full-time work came my way. So that was good, finally. I found working just at the centre I'm at now has been good because I've been able to finish my studies. I started my studies close to 20 years ago now, but I got sidetracked. I was living in share housing, and I was finding it not the most conducive conditions to study, and I just kept putting things off. And I finally work with a team where I feel very well supported, and I've been able to finish my diploma just at the end of last year, which was a real achievement. It felt like, and yeah, I suppose I'm involved in this conversation because I think it was Glenn that spotted my article on the spoke.
Got a little muffled. You've got your finger over the mic or something.
I probably do, yeah. I'll take my finger off the mic.
That's it. Good again now. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so recently I've been encouraged by my wife and family and colleagues to do a bit of writing. So I wrote a blog article on the Spoke, which is the Early Childhood Australia's blog website, and I got some good recognition from that. And then I did a podcast as well. So I'm starting to feel like my voice is being heard, and that there's a real purpose in what I'm doing. So sorry, I've got some notes. As a young boy, I spent a lot of time moving between my mum's house and my dad's house. And while, I got a lot of love and a lot of attention from both of my parents, it often made me feel a little bit lonely because I was just moving from one place to the other and not necessarily feeling like I belonged anywhere. And I had, friends with both parents together, and I often felt a little bit of a disconnect, and that I didn't couldn't quite relate to them the same way that I could relate to other kids that had broken homes. So as early as my first day my first day studying at TAFE about 19 years ago, I remember some of those feelings of being isolated or the odd one out come back to me as I walked into a classroom with 35 women, and it was and myself. So it was always, and there were these sort of thoughts that came into my own head, and sort of questions. I was always questioned by people, why do you choose to work with young children? And my answer was always, why not? But that I think initially I felt maybe naively that people were just interested in me and wanted to know about me. But I think in hindsight, a lot of that was just questions based on my gender and concerns about my intention. I can say, I think over time and with experience, I can, I've grown to have more of an understanding of the value and the positive impact that I can have on children. And I can proudly say that I am a man who cares.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tristan. That's a really nice introduction to who you are. Thanks for being open and sharing your story from childhood through to becoming a worker in early years education. It gives us a nice flavour of who's speaking and who's.
No worries. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. We'll come back to you as the conversation unfolds. I'm just going to come to Mark Tamhane in a moment. I'm just going to post in the chat box here something that came up in session 1. Dr. Martyn Mills-Bayne was talking about the three key barriers to men working in childcare, and there they are, which is the pay, that breadwinner argument he called it, cultural attitudes that, care work is women's work, and also fear from men themselves of being facing allegations or those kind of suspicions that Tristan just referenced there. So back now to one of the places where most men get probably an experience of caring, which is the world of fatherhood. Some of us just have one, a few of us have two. But Mark's got to 6, and I don't know if you're stopping at 6, Mark, or if there's still more to come. So Mark's a very experienced father, and also written about his experiences of fatherhood, as well as his experiences being an at-home dad, which is why we wanted to hear a bit of his story. If you can cover all those years of fatherhood and 6 children in a few minutes, Mark, we'd love to get to the sense of who you are.
Thanks very much, first of all, for inviting me, Glenn, and thank you everybody else. It's great to be here. My name's Mark Tamhane, and oddly enough, I'm actually an only child, and I had never envisaged having so many children. In fact, when I was quite young, the idea of having other children around me all the time was quite surreal to me. I kind of enjoyed my own company, which I still do, although I don't get obviously to do that much. A bit about my story. I've worked in the media since I was 19 years old. I'm now 53, and I've actually worked for the ABC for 32 years, believe it or not. And I've worked in Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney and London for them. I've been married twice, which is possibly one of the secrets between about my 6 children. And I have the 6 children range in age, between 2 and 22, although the one that I call 2 years old, she will be 2 next month. So she is still technically 1. Now, the older 3 children, who are 16, 19 and 22, they all currently live with their mother. And the 3 younger ones live with me. So I'm now really on my 2nd round of looking after 3 young children. And they are, as I said, I've got the 1-year-old, the 3-year-old and the 5-year-old. And it's like I'm gone back 20 years in time and I'm kind of doing it all again, which is pretty interesting. My wife, Emily Burke, who's a terrific ABC journalist, you might have heard some of her work. She thought I might have some insights and a bit of an unusual perspective on fatherhood, given the fact that I have these 6 children and there is a big gap between, I guess, the first tranche of them and the second tranche of them. And she thought, given this perspective, she encouraged me about 2 years ago to put pen to paper about this. So I've written a number of articles for ABC Life, which you might have heard is going to be cut as part of ABC budget cuts. But hopefully some of that content and some pretty interesting content about people from all about all aspects of life in Australia. Hopefully that will continue on in some form on the ABC as a really good digital offering, which isn't compromised by things like advertising and so on. So she thought I might have something to offer. So she put me in touch with someone there that she knew, and we started a relationship, and I've penned a number of articles for them about my experiences of parenting. I guess I've always believed that men should have an equal role in parenting. And I guess I've got a pretty fatalistic attitude towards it, in the sense that I would say that if that's at the expense of your social life or your ideal career, so be it. If I look at my own sort of example, I was quite a high flyer in my early years at the ABC. I was actually only 28 when I landed an overseas correspondence job, and I was in London. But my attitudes to everything really started to change after my first son was born, when I was in London in 1997, late 1997. And I remember in about March 1998, I had been away covering the Northern Ireland peace process, which was a very long, difficult and involved set of negotiations that went on for years and years and years, and finally culminated in the Good Friday Peace Agreement in April 1998. But before that happened, there was weeks of these talks that appeared to be going nowhere. And I was over in Dublin at Dublin Castle sort of reporting on this thing, and I was having to apologise to my editors back in Sydney saying, look, I'm really sorry, but nothing actually happened today that's actually worth telling you about. And I kept ringing up my wife and saying, look, I think I'm going to have to stay here another couple of days. I think I'm going to have to stay here another couple of days. And I finally got back to London, to where I was living, and I walked into our kitchen around lunchtime, and my son was sitting up in the high chair being fed by his mother, and he looked at me, and you could see the look on his face as in, gee, I wonder who this guy is. And he had already almost forgotten who I was, and that was a real sort of wake-up call. So when I got back to Australia, I deliberately passed over more high-profile jobs, which would probably take me away from home and out of the office for long, long hours, in favour of working early morning shifts, so that I could really be around my children more at the end of the day, and the end of the day that really mattered, which of course is the evening. And that meant that I was able to pick them up from school, help them with their homework, take them to activities, give them dinner and put them back to bed. And it also meant my wife could do some part-time work. Now, she didn't have any, she actually had a Bachelor of Economics, but she was doing some part-time work as a receptionist at a medical surgery. But that was really important, I think, for her mental health and well-being, and knowing that she was making an economic contribution to the family as well. With my second lot of young children, I was able to take a combination of part-time work, annual leave, long service leave, and leave without pay. And that's meant I've been actually able to spend a lot of time looking after them and bringing them up. And I actually currently only work 2 days a week at the moment, and my wife is working 4. So I guess in many ways you could argue on balance that I'm really their primary carer. So that's really my story and where I'm coming from. So I guess I'm an older dad with very young children, but I guess I have the perspective of having done this before. It's certainly not easy, but it's been a really interesting, enriching and pretty challenging kind of existence. But I don't think I'd really swap it for anything.
Yeah, that's great, Mark. And I had the privilege of being at home full time with my daughter in the first 2 or 3 years of her life back in the late 90s, and it set up our relationship for life. And I would never, and it was tough, and there were challenges and the things that I lost out on because of it, but I would never change that for anything in the world. So yeah, I think it's an absolute privilege. And I need to pick you up on one thing. As a member of the media, I love the way that you did the whole from six kids from 2 to 22, even though it's not quite true. Never let a good headline get in the way of the truth.
Yeah, never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, that's it. Fake news. Yeah, and let me Mark Tamhane, is it?
That's right.
Tamhane, yeah, okay. I was calling you Tamhane or something. I apologise. Probably not the first.
No, that's all good.
I do like to work on the pronunciations throughout the day to get it right. Okay, so but that's it. That's our introduction to our wonderful array of caring men. Good examples of how men in our culture care. Whether that's men like Mark and Greg caring for members of their own family, their children, their mums, whatever. Or whether that's men like Tristan or Luke caring for members of other people's family in childcare or nursing. You see what I did there, Mark? Nice bit of segue coming up there. A bit of a job for me at ABC Life if there was still a job to get. And so, what do these guys have in common or not have in common about in terms of their experiences? The first thing I want to lean into is because clearly men are underrepresented in these areas, and so my first question is, why aren't there more men involved in nursing and childcare and caring for family members and being the primary parent or at home. What's stopping us? What are the barriers? And I'll come back to you first, Luke. You know, what's in the way of more men being in nursing, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's really the heart of the Men in Nursing campaign, where in Australia it's about 10 to 11% of men men that are registered to be a nurse with AHPRA. And for me, it's very interesting because I look into the different specialties. I was just having a private chat with Mal in the chat room, and you'll see that in a lot of the critical care areas, emergency, you'll see that there's a high percentage, more like 25. Sorry, Siri's in the background. Sorry. 25 to 30% in some cases, very, very high. And I think the barriers and stereotypes are really much to do with the old, outdated stereotypes of what it is to be a man: strong, stoic, breadwinner, crying is a weakness, fragility is a weakness, all these things, being sensitive is a weakness. All these areas say, stop, you can't go in these areas. Hey, maybe that instead of going to a caring profession, which some men would find that that's their calling, they feel pressured by society and they say, hey, I'm going to be a mechanic or a police officer. Or even in some cases, I was in Perth last year when we could travel, where there was a student who shared his story. He said he wanted to be a nurse 10 years ago. He felt really strongly, but he got a lot of pushback, and he became a I think it was a heavy vehicle mechanic. And he woke up one day, it's like, this is not what I want to do. And he changed. But I think what we need for these barriers and stereotypes is role models. We need people to say, hey, this is normal. This is a really fulfilling career for me. And until we make it normal, I suppose, then I think we're going to be really slow progress to having people where they want to be and express whatever employment they want to be in, to be a nurse or any other caring role if they so choose.
Thanks, Luke. I also have been heckled by Siri on several occasions on Zoom. I appreciate the frustration of that. She was saying, male nurses, I'm sorry, I don't understand that concept.
Yeah, exactly. It's even built into our technology.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good start. So, Greg, I mean, it's slightly different, right? In sort of that family care role, it's not like you're making a choice of this is a career I'm going to go into. Circumstances present themselves, but even so, when we look at family caring, it is more women than men. So, what from your perspective are the barriers to more men caring?
Well, I think I think about that question. It's probably not about trying to get more men in those family caring roles. I think there are a lot of blokes out there in them roles. There's about 1.2 million, roughly, just shy of 1.2 million in Australia. And that's based on the survey Disability Ageing and Carers. It's most accurate, I guess, representation we've got of unpaid carers. So about 1.2 million. Down here in Tassie, where I am, there's around 38,000, which is about 1 in 6 blokes. But you don't see caring done out in public. It's all done at home. And I think that's where we don't see guys doing that caring out in public. So it's not necessarily something that you think of. So I think it's probably more around getting those guys that are in them roles to identify, and that's a big challenge. I think with any unpaid carer, there's 2 points, I can't remember off the top of my head, 2.7 million carers in Australia, men and women, and there's a lot. They say there's a lot more hidden carers out there because they don't identify as a carer. They don't put their hand up and access services or access supports. And for those hidden carers, I think there's a lot of them are blokes because they might be in that role where they're providing by being a financial earner for the family or providing in some other way. They're not the ones that are going to appointments or doing the full-time primary caring roles. They're in that secondary carer role. And so to get more recognition for them guys, it's about, I guess, clearly knowing what caring is in their family and in their home, and giving a bit more recognition to that more broadly in society for carers, not just for blokes, but for for carers in general. And so I think to recognise that caring role and get more blokes to identify. And I think it might have been Mark or Luke raised the point about having role models, so having stories out there is a really important thing, and that's what I try and do through some of the stuff that I do, is sharing stories and videos and that where blokes are talking about it, where it's trying to make it normal. It's okay. I think Luke, you said that before. It's okay to care. So that could apply to a lot of situations. So it's just trying to normalise it and be recognised. Does that sort of answer the question? I think.
Yeah, no, totally. There's no right or wrong way. It's just sharing. You're here because you're the voice of experience, right? And yeah, what was coming up for me was sort of remembering friends who are involved in setting up male carer support groups in the UK, because whilst similar, 30 to 40% of carers were blokes, all the data was telling us that. But if you went to any kind of carers organisation, carers support group, it was pretty much all women turning up. So the blokes weren't sort of like identifying or reaching out to these services. I mean, is that why you created Men Care too? Had you tried going to other carer support groups and stuff?
Oh yeah, definitely, and been involved in focus groups and workshops and all that sort of thing. And yeah, you just the odd one out, and you feel like you don't fit in them environments, so you don't. I think there was a quote from a father of a child going to an autism support group, and he felt like he didn't fit in, so he just didn't bother going. And I think that's the case with a lot of. I know personally that's what I do. If I go somewhere and I feel like I don't fit in, you don't go, or you're very reluctant to go back. And I think you've probably covered it in other sessions that I've been listening to on that about male-friendly services, and I think that's a big barrier to blokes that are in, like myself, in the unpaid informal caring roles, to accessing supports and services, because them organisations, service providers, big state bodies, and also the community-based ones that don't necessarily adjust what they're doing to try and meet the needs of guys. They're 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and outside of that, it's sort of fend for yourself. And it's really, and I guess too with what I do is more informal, and it's more social, trying to build that social connection, which a lot of carers don't have. With COVID, we have the isolation, but that's what you do as a carer. You're isolated with that person you look after most of the time anyway.
Yes.
So you're isolated. So having that social connection or social outlet's really important. And I think some of the formal organisations, they miss out on that opportunity to just engage and build a relationship with blokes, because they are so focused on delivering programs. And I think the Dad's Group guy mentioned before about metrics, numbers and all that sort of thing. I don't look at any of that sort of stuff. It's more about just having a conversation with someone, and then further down the track, if you build up a relationship, you get that trust with people, that's when you can start to, provide programs and services and that through what you do, I think.
Yeah, and I'm smiling, Greg, because I love all of your social content. It's every day you've got new interesting stuff you're sharing. But the stuff that really makes me smile is when you're sharing that stuff of you've taken a bunch of male carers out on a boating trip, fishing, or to the footy or something like that, as the respite piece. And seeing that bunch of ordinary blokes who are all carers out there, sort of caring for each other just by hanging out together. It's beautiful what you do. I guess a lot of carers don't get that opportunity or experience.
Yeah, definitely. And there's, I think what's good about it too is there's nothing attached to it. There's no expectation of them to fill out forms or do a course or anything like that. It's more just have a social connection and that, and with sharing the information like I do, it's trying to just put stuff out there for guys that it's there if you want it. But it's more about the social connection and recognising these guys have a people themselves, that they need an outlet. They need, I guess, similar for dads. I've heard that with other conversations around dads. It's just having your own identity still. You're not just a dad. You've still got mates to try and keep relationships going, and work and all that sort of thing as well. So it's about keeping a bit of your own identity as well as whatever else it is you're doing.
Great. Thanks, Greg. And that, when you were talking there earlier on about, feeling isolated, it reminded me of, Tristan's story about his feelings of isolation. So Tristan, coming to you now, if you're on top of the unmuting bit. Yeah. So we're talking, what are the barriers? What stops more men? It's only 2 or 3% in your world of workers are blokes.
Thank you for reminding me. I heard, I wanted to say a lot of what Luke said, but maybe not as articulate as he did. It's quite a similar thing. People often say, why do you work with young children? And it's the same as why anyone would get into education of people at any age. They want to help shape young minds and give children a chance to develop and be the best they can be. So, but yeah, I think a lot of the barrier is, like Luke said, about not people. It's an outdated sort of view, but the idea that caring or looking after even young children especially is a woman's work. And I've worked in early childhood services for nearly 20 years, and I can definitively say that it's not. And I've had a lot of support along the way, but and I've met the occasion, few and far between, I'll meet another guy, and it's sometimes it's not awkward, but it's odd sometimes when you meet another guy. You're so not used to working with them, and you forget what to talk about. Sometimes you have to break the ice and just talk about footy, but it's interesting. But I would say, a lot of men are turned away from the profession when they not think that their colleagues or their people in their family or their personal lives might see them as not manly anymore, and that's not the case. In some ways, it makes you more manly. It gives you more of a chance to express who you are, and and have that positive male influence on young people's lives. So, and obviously there's the concerns over the pay disparity. I haven't done as much research as Luke, but I don't know if it's the same. It might be similar in nursing, but there's the pay disparity that the women working in early childhood have had to deal with for the IONs, and that they, and I feel like as a male working in this field, I'm supporting them to keep the good fight up and do our thing. That's all I got to add at the moment.
That's great. Thanks, Luke. Really, thanks, Tristan. Sorry, really appreciate it.
Cheers, Luke. Greg, Glenn. Sorry.
Coming to you, Mark. I mean, obviously, I think lots more dads are involved now in care with their kids than ever before. But the percentage of full-time at-home dads is really low still. And at the other end of the sort of the fatherhood experience, I do a lot of work with separated dads. We know a lot of separated dads have little or no time with their kids, and funnily, some of the barriers seem to be exactly the same. Things like the workplace is the demands of the workplace is one of the is one of the key barriers to separated dads being more involved in their kids' lives, and that's obviously something that comes up for new dads as well. But in your experience of 6 children and having thought about this in different ways, what do you think is preventing more men being involved? Maybe is it just about them taking that decision that you took, or are there other sort of factors in the way?
Look, I'd say a couple of things about this. I mean, obviously there are structural things like parental leave for dads, whether it's paid or unpaid, and obviously the kind of model obviously that they have in Nordic countries is obviously sort of gold standard, and I think there's plenty of discussion about that. Some companies are better than others. Some public services are better than others, and there is a great discrepancy. I mean, you see hilarious kind of articles written by dads who've they've had parental leave and it's been this great revelation to them, and then you kind of read and you sort of see that they've actually sort of spent 6 weeks at home, not a year or years, or restructured their whole kind of work life to try and be there primarily for their children. I think we need to see bosses, companies, employers provide obviously more flexible work, more flexible hours. And I think, hopefully one of the positive things that can come out of this pandemic is that employers can see that people can be really productive at home. They can, but from some of the stuff that I've read, in a lot of white collar and service companies, people are just powering through their work because they're not dealing with distractions in the office and constant emails, and they don't have to have those water cooler chats about the football at that they might not want to have every time you go to the kitchen just to get a sandwich or something. So hopefully employers can sort of see that by being at home and giving the employees some sort of autonomy, particularly with their time, that the same amount of work, if more, can actually get done. But obviously they've got to trust people to be flexible. Now, my kind of take on that would be, people say, well, you should love your work. I would actually argue, work for a company or organisation or a boss that loves you. And what I mean by that is that you should really aim to work for a company or an organisation that recognises that you've got a lot to give in a professional sense, but you also need to be there for your family as well. And often those employees that have that a good work-life balance actually tend to be better employees, more engaged with the company, the goals of the organisation, than people who sort of, spend 60 hours a week working and have zero time for their family, or people that kind of goof off when they should be working. Now, I know everyone cannot sort of keep changing jobs until they've found their ideal employer, but it can sort of have a really detrimental impact on the security of your income if you do that, or you super balance. But what kids really want is just for their parents to be around. And a former work colleague of mine, Madonna King, and a childhood friend of mine, Bill Jennings, who runs a company called Time and Space in Melbourne, and he works a lot with schools, high schools. And a lot of their work is actually based around reintroducing teenage daughters back to their dads. A lot of teenage daughters are saying, I don't know this man that actually lives under the same roof. He's pretty much gone out the door before I get up in the morning, and he's not there until sort of late. So he gets home late, and I don't really know him, and I really want him around in my life. I want a relationship with him. And I think, teenage boys are saying this as well. And I think in many ways, fathers themselves have to kind of seize the nettle on this. And there are instruments that you can use to do this, to get a better work-life balance, or to be there more for your family. The Fair Work Commission even has a draft letter on its website that shows you how to request from your employer to go part-time. And there are actually very few sort of legislative barriers from an employer's point of view, or sorry, legislative kind of exemptions that they can actually say, no, actually, Mark Tamhane cannot work part-time. You know, it's operationally necessary to have him there sort of 40 hours a week or whatever it is. So I think in many cases, if we're talking about parenting, obviously, it's the onus is often on dads to step up. The other thing I would say is that another barrier is that, you know, some of the unconscious bias that we have, there's often, if a man is seen with a young child, you know, he is minding it rather than parenting it. So I think once we get past those sorts of things, and I think children benefit from having men around. And, you know, I have two small daughters in childcare, and the fact that there is only a handful of people around like Tristan in early childhood care, I find really, really sad, because I think it's really important for young girls and young boys to have really strong male role models. And, you know, all power to Tristan and people, and Max and the people that we heard from before.
That's great, Mark. Fantastic. So, yeah, you're triggering off all memories of kind of experiences I had as an at-home dad. One of which was going for a job at the Equal Opportunities Commission in their media department, and asking. I said, I'm the full-time, you know, primary carer. If we have a second child, do I get six months parental leave? They said, oh no, that's only for women. And that was the Equal Opportunities Commission. It was so we have started to come a long way, and we've improved. But it's amazing how restrictive parental leave still is, and it's only people who have really supportive workplaces, or where there's quite a disparity in the income, and the mum's earning a lot more, where dads can really make that work from an early age, it seems. And it's not through lack of desire, though obviously that's part of it, I think. So I'm really aware that we've got like just an amazing room of people here looking around. Dr. Jed, Dr. Martyn, Mal, Andrew Stephen, who's been commenting, Stu Torrance from AMSA, who's got loads of experience of dementia care, Nick Hansen there sharing about his experiences as a single dad. Who wants to jump in on this conversation a little bit? Martyn.
Yeah, can I just pick up on what Mark said there? It was a really important point, I think, around particularly men working with young children in childcare, kindergarten, early childhood settings. Often we're seen as being there because we're a role model for the children. Male role model for generally boys, but for children, all right? That's one really important part. But I think what Mark suggested is it's also the relationship between the male and the female educators. In some families, children don't get to see how male adults interact with female adults in, you know, positive and supportive ways, and seeing that as a role model for how to interact as an adult, as a boy, as a man, as a human, I think is really important. It's not just the role model for, you know, me on you kind of thing. It's actually a bigger picture. So it was really great.
Yeah, thanks.
I totally agree, and possibly that's because a lot of those children don't see their fathers home.
Yeah,
they're in bed before when their father comes home, so they don't really see their father interacting with their mother very much at all.
And just noting that other people in the room who I haven't named, Peter Heggie, who's a carer, Greg from the States, who's, I think we found your Men and Child Care Facebook page. Just let us know if I've posted the right one. Who else wants to jump in on this conversation? Mal, Jed, Andrew.
I'll have a go. Yeah, so my story is, so I'm an ex-truckie, so been married for 20 years, and Mrs. got meningitis, which sort of messed up a few things neurologically. So over the 20 years, it sort of got progressively worse. And I was a truck driver, and I do night shift, and then basically, you know, things are going wrong, but you'd sort of be able to work night shift and then sort of fix it all up during the day, and then sort of get it all rolling again and just jump the truck again. But it got to a point where the services all jumped in, and they said, you've got to quit your job and, you know, become a carer. And I'm the sole breadwinner, so when the wheels would fall off, I just, just do the old sort of, chuck money out. And they'd sort of sort everything out and work for ages, but no support groups, nothing there for men at all. Sort of all the support that there was for the person with care. I think there's a carers WA, sort of that, they're sort of progressively getting less funded. So even now, the only people that sort of help us are they just get less and less funding, so they can't do anything anyway. So they're sort of, still in the water anyway. So it's a waste of time. But anyway, going back to the truck driver thing, is that it got to a point where they said, look, you've got to start caring for your family. So I've got, so this is 5 years ago. So it's dementia, so young onset dementia. So there's no recovery. It's basically it's going to work to whatever it's going to work to, and it's it'll be all over. So it's just caring to a point where it's but you sort of go. And on top of that, I've got a young fellow with intellectual disabilities by luck as well, just chucked at him. And you sort of go, so eventually when I was driving, or the social workers was pretty much want me to sort of come home and sort of help everyone. So they basically, I said, look, you've got to pull some strings and get diagnosis and help me out. Because I said, I don't want to be a carer. It's like, when you go home there, so you go home, you got nothing, there's no support, it's there's no, you just, especially for blokes, sort of, I think women have got they've got networks, so the women sort of talk to other women. I don't think it's sort of supposed to be like that, but men don't do that as well. There's no support unless you go looking for it, and then you sort of have to come to your own solutions to sort of make it all work. But but in the end, all the social workers sort of within a couple of days made it all happen. The rest is history. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, where are you based?
West Australia. Yeah, so I'm regional West Australia.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Southwest.
Gotcha. Oh, look, thanks for being here and sharing your story.
Yep. No worries there. Just use the soapbox for it.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm glad you had the opportunity.
Yep.
Are you connected in with Greg's newsletter up there?
So I'm sort of so I'm on the board of, I don't know if you heard it's called Wellman.
Grant Westport.
Yeah. So I'm in their group. So I'm on their executive committee in WA. So Grant, you've stolen one of our best. He's gone over east. So please look after us. Don't forget us over here. So it's But that's who I'm affiliated with.
Excellent. No, Grant used to be on our board and been doing great work for many
top
years.
man.
Yeah. Excellent. That's good to know. Good to know you got that connection.
No,
and Stu Torrance, I don't know if you're dealing with a retaining wall there as you were last time we spoke with you. Have you at that point you were making about recharge your batteries program? It's really interesting. Have you got something you want to share?
Oh, I was just reiterating what Greg from Mencare 2 was talking about in regards that a lot of male carers don't see themselves as carers. It's just a part of what they do. It's what they signed up for on their wedding day, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. And they'll kill themselves trying. A lot of the guys that ended up attending the Recharge Your Batteries program, and we called it that because the guys weren't looking for assistance. They weren't looking for help. They weren't looking for information. What they were looking for was something that would get them through the next 24 hours, because they were hitting the wall. They were just about out of energy. So we talked their language, just like we do with the Spanner in the Works program. And we said, hey guys, you want to recharge your batteries? You want to have more energy? Here's a program. And they said, we just want more sleep. And they came to the program and we put sleep on the 3rd week. It was a 4-week program. It annoyed them no end for the first 2 weeks. But once they got to the 3rd week, they understood why we formatted that way. And in the 4th week, we actually introduced all these services and showed them how it was their taxes and their ability to reclaim what they'd already paid was the way for them to go. So, yeah, all the blokes, as I was saying, didn't identify as a carer in the first place. And I think that's a big hurdle that Greg and others looking out for men like that have to deal with.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Got it. No, thanks, Stu. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all your support over the summit over the past month, and great
good.
Guys at the Australian Men's Sheds Association, AMSA, are doing. Great to have you on board. So look, we've got 5 minutes left. So I want to go back to our panel now for their kind of their killer final statement, and I need to give them a kind of a nice, easy lob up to knock out of the park and bring us home for this session, for today's event, and for this week. So no pressure to finish on a high, guys. So I wanted to talk a bit about how do we get more men into caring professions and caring roles. But I also wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what the what are the positives, either on a personal level or the positives for wider society. So I'll let you choose what your final call to action is. If you want to talk about the positives, great. If you want to talk about how do we get more men into the world that you're in, great. If you have got another call to action, sign up for our Men in Nursing campaign or whatever it is. That's all good too. It's your 1 minute to give us your final thoughts to bring this conversation home. And Luke, I'll come to you first.
Great, thanks, Glenn. Well, I thought, considering you guys are here, I'll give you a bit of insight what the Working Party is going to do in the next 6 months to 8 months. So as we talk about role models, we are aiming to link up with the Careers Counsellors Australia Association, and we're going to be making toolkits of different inspirational resources for them to access and to really highlight and see nursing as the authentically see nursing for what it is. We don't want these old stereotypes, so we're actually going to put our resources out there so we make sure that we're represented the way we want to be represented. Other things we are also doing is we're looking more into more film content within student nurses and to give their input. And not only are we going to be interviewing student nurses, we're going to be interviewing their family, friends, and colleagues and getting their thoughts. Obviously only the positive thoughts, but that's okay. So for a call of action, please get in touch. I might put my email. Oh no, thanks, Glenn. You put the address in there already. Please get in contact. Go onto the website. Contact the college, and if you want to speak to me directly, just email them. Be a part. Contribute anyway. Then happy to send me an email. Happy to hear back.
Great. Thanks, Luke. It's been a wonderful contribution.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll look forward to staying in touch and finding out how that's progressing. And if there's any way we can support through our networks, just please let us know. We're happy to partner with you and support you in any way we can. Greg Smith, Mencare 2.
I don't know what to say. I'm confused. There's so many things going through my head, but I think so mencare2.org's website. If you can follow that weekly email that and link put up there. Thanks, Glenn. So do a weekly email. I guess I'd say, look, caring for a family member is very hard. It's very tough, but it's also very rewarding because you help and contribute to give them a better quality of life that they might not have had, and it's given me a different perspective on life. But it's also, I was lucky that I recognised that I needed to see things from a different perspective so that I could be a good carer for mum, but also be my own person as well. And I think that's the big thing for anyone that's in that informal caring role, is to recognise they've got their own life to live as well. And that's very important, I guess, for, when that caring role comes to an end, that you've got something else to go on to, because, it's important to have your own goals and that in life. And I think I'm very lucky to do what I do, and look forward to growing slowly as time ticks on and we get more recognition.
Great.
Thanks,
excellent work. Great to catch up just briefly. Was when we next get face to face, and sign up for his newsletter if you don't do anything else. Or get on his socials. support what that man's doing. It's awesome work. Tristan Page.
Yep. All right. My last thought I'll leave you with is I was looking back at a book that my mum introduced to me. We went to this book launch at Glee Books nearly 15, 20 years ago, and it's called What Men Don't Talk About. It was written by a woman, Maggie Hamilton. I remember at the time asking my mum, why is it written by a woman? And she said, isn't it obvious? She said, go and have a good look at yourself and answer that question for yourself. And I often look back at that book and after reading it, I look back and, it asks questions along the lines of why do so many men find it hard to, express their feelings in a healthy way, or how much they care about someone or something. What do men worry about? How do they see their bodies in the world? Why do they stay silent in dangerous and dark situations? And that's part of the driving force pretty much of every day when I go to work. I think about, not just for young boys, but young children, all the young children in my care. I think about wanting to impact them and, let them see that a big bloke like myself can show his vulnerable side, can be empathetic towards his female colleagues, can be empathetic towards children, and can show feelings in a safe way, so that they may that the feeling they can sort of have their feelings known, and they can actually it can be promoted within them that they are able to express feelings all the time, rather than keeping them bottled up and letting them get negative responses coming from that. You don't want to see when the kids get older, for them to feel like their last resort is to show emotion. So I'll leave you with that.
Right, thanks, Tristan.
No worries.
And I've posted a link to the article that you wrote in the chat box there, and encourage people to go and read it first before they then go on and buy Maggie Hamilton's book and read that second. Now,
yeah, no worries. Thank you.
At the beginning of this event, Mark had 6 kids. Hopefully it's not 7 yet. It's still 6. Mark, there will not be a 7th. Unfortunately, last year we found out my wife had an ectopic pregnancy, and that was basically the end of reproduction from her end of things. So sad to say there will be no more, but relief also. Sorry to hear that, Mark, but yeah.
No, totally. I think these days when you say you got 6 children, probably 50 years ago people wouldn't have even batted an eyelid, but now it's obviously a fair bit.
Yeah. Anyway, Mark Tamhane, what is your final thought for us?
Look, I was totally blown away by some of the figures that Greg gave about men caring for elderly people in our society and people that need care. And I can see myself in that position very soon, because both of my parents are in their 80s, mid to late 80s. And I'm their only son. So I think, like Greg, I will soon be probably taking much more responsibility for them, as well as responsibility for my younger children. And I guess as the population ages and we see more of these men in these sort of informal roles, like Greg and probably myself in the future, I think that could actually be a really positive thing for all the things that we've been talking about today. And having more men in paid formal settings like Tristan and Luke. And so I'm hopeful that that might be something that we see more of. I wish there were more people like Tristan in certainly in the childcare settings that my girls are in, because I think that is really, really important. I think once we get a fairer balance in the parenting kind of aspect of things, that a lot of these things, more men in nursing, more men in formal paid caring roles, I think that will naturally evolve. My only final thought is I greatly admire a gentleman, Christopher Scanlon from Swinburne University, who's written a bit about fatherhood. And I think he wrote a short piece in The Age, pretty devastating in many aspects, about, it was quite critical of a lot of men who'd taken on fatherhood or who'd become fathers, but had really not changed. And his message was, if fatherhood hasn't upended your lifestyle, you're not doing it right. So perhaps that's the last thought I would like to leave you with.
All right, thank you very much. Well, I've posted a link to one of your articles. We'll chuck the good Professor Scanlon's some of his work in the chat box there too, for those who feel drawn to that. And that's it. That's us formally over. We'll leave the room open for a few minutes for you to chat, but let me just formally complete and say I've thoroughly enjoyed today's session. What an awesome exploration it's been. We've covered so much and yet left so much more to discuss, to a beginning of a conversation, not an end. This was Men Who Care. Thanks to Marty and the excellent international panel he put together in the first session. Thanks to Tom Docking from Dad's Group, and thanks to our 4 excellent speakers today: Luke Yokota, Greg Smith, Mark Tamhane, and Tristan Page. And thank you for all of you. What an awesome room. You've all brought experience and stories to the conversation too.